As gardeners, we all know about vegetables, fruit trees, and animals in our garden, but there is a secret factor lying beneath the soil in your mulch, and that is mushrooms. That is why today I am in Maine visiting with my favorite mushroom growers and creators, Spore, and we're gonna learn all about mushrooms, how they grow, how to incorporate them in your garden, and how they're even made. Wow, even walking in here, it smells like a forest floor, like mulch and mushrooms. And Louis, he's gonna be our mushroom expert.
Hey, Jacques, welcome to Spore.
Yeah, this is amazing. And already immediately, I see so much cool stuff and I wanna just jump right into it. What is this? This looks like, if I had to guess, I think they're reishi mushrooms. They look kind of crazy and weird like that, right?
This is Ganoderma multipilium, a species of reishi. It's an incredible mushroom that is used medicinally all over the world.
Right, so this isn't one that like you're going to a grocery store and you're sauteing and eating for dinner, right?
That's correct. People make tinctures, different extracts, tea, but it's a little too woody to eat.
Yeah.
If you do find it in the wild, different Ganoderma species can be eaten when they're very young though.
On this side, I definitely see eating mushrooms. I want to talk a little bit about like what you have here, because this looks also really cool. Right off the bat, I know a little bit about mushrooms, enough to be dangerous. And I'd say these are pink oysters, golden oysters, and Italian or blue oyster.
This array of oysters are all ripe, ready to pick. What you see here is really the fruiting body.
This, like when people see that, they're like, that's the mushroom, right? And that's it, but it's not.
You have this whole block underneath, right?
Yeah.
And that block is full of mycelium. And so the mycelium is really most of what the organism is. And so that is what the mushroom is fruiting out of when conditions are right.
Mushrooms aren't plants or animals. They're kind of like in their own unique zone, right?
It wasn't until the 60s that they got put into their own kingdom, fungi. Their biology is a lot more like us in certain ways.
That's what I've heard recently, is that like they're maybe a little bit closer to us. And speaking of like conditions, like what is going on here? It looks like it's an enclosed, almost like a little mini pop-up greenhouse, but there's also apparatus like attached to it. Like,
sure, absolutely. So this is our boom room, and this is our custom-made grow chamber. Essentially, this is controlling airflow and humidity, which are two very, very important factors. Mushrooms are 90% moisture by weight.
Can we actually open it and look inside?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I've grown oysters and they've gotten pretty big, but like these look crazy. Like the pink oysters especially.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen like, so is the word flush, right? Like, is that what you call it?
Yeah, exactly. You can still use the word crop or something, but the term that we use is flush. As the edges start to turn up, that's when you want to harvest.
They're so beautiful. Like the pink oysters, like look at this color and the textures. It's incredible. And definitely has a little bit of that mushroom tinge, but it's all throughout here, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely a mushroom factory. So these are the blocks, and this is all full of mycelium. This is the food that's feeding these mushrooms, right?
That's exactly right.
And down there, it looks like you have one that was just started.
This grew into that. So that's pretty cool that once you introduce that oxygen, it tells the mushrooms to grow.
So it's the oxygen.
Yeah.
So then this is gonna be just like this, where they all kind of start forming. Actually, right there, looks like maybe there's a little bit of a pin. The pin is like the starting point, right? So that's like the first little expression of the fruiting body or the mushroom itself.
Yeah, you'll see words like pin or primordia.
So this setup right here is pretty intense if you're like a real serious mushroom grower. It looks like you could fit like 20 blocks in here.
Yeah, it's about right. That's the capacity, and that's a lot of mushrooms.
It's a lot of mushrooms. Like maybe, I mean, I love mushrooms, but it's a little bit more than I could eat. But over there, I do see a setup that looks a little bit more manageable if you only want to grow like a couple blocks of mushrooms. So this, from what I could tell, there's like the little pump here, a fan, and is this just like a scaled down version of the boom room?
Pretty much. It's scaled down humidifier, scaled down fan. We've got the same humidistat here, the mic controller.
Oh, okay.
And we call this our automated boomer bin. You can have it automated or unmodified, unautomated.
And then here you have 2 blocks.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the setup, or?
Pink oyster and golden oyster. Wow. You can put 2, maybe 3 blocks in there, but if you want, you can actually make a bed, a cake of substrate and grow other mushrooms that way
like
as well.
A full out lineup of the mushroom spawn and everything at the bottom.
Yeah, and we've got an unmodified tub here that is fully colonized. Check that out.
Wow, that's incredible.
So that's all that mycelium on top. This is ready to fruit. And so putting it into fruiting conditions may just mean increasing the airflow a little bit.
I see. So the thing I really like about this is that I've tried growing blocks on like my desk at home, and the hardest thing for me was, I can see it right now, is managing the humidity. And especially in the winter time, like in San Diego, it gets really dry to the point where my skin starts bleeding. This is really cool because then now I could grow mushrooms in the winter time, year round, automated. I don't have to like spray them. So this is actually something I'm definitely going to be adding to my home for sure.
Absolutely. You can keep it between 80 and 90% humidity all the time.
And then over here, it looks like there's a lot of different things going on. What's the jar? It looks like Cheetos.
Yeah, this is actually cordyceps. We're running an experiment with these right now. It's a very, very cool mushroom that we hope to be offering in the future. It's fruiting out of a more protein-rich substrate. That's because in nature, it likes to grow on bugs, caterpillars, crickets, that kind of thing.
It's like the zombifying it.
Yeah,
right?
this is the zombie mushroom from The Last of Us. But don't worry, it's totally safe, and it's really good for lung health. It's really good for energy, and so you'd make a tincture or tea out of this.
It's not like a frying mushroom again, like the other guys.
I've heard of people eating it directly in meals too, but less common. So we're running experiments on that. We've got a few other cool experiments here. We've got some logs that are colonized.
That is a log.
This one is colonized with hen of the woods, and you can see it's sort of gnarly looking, but it's nicely colonized with hen of the woods.
Tell there's a log there.
And then this one is chicken of the woods.
Oh, and I didn't even know you could grow that one, cultivated.
It's definitely a little more difficult, but it can be done. And then we have some crazy looking hen of the woods in bags. And this is called braining. This is what you want to do before you release it.
So now that we've seen a lot of these mushrooms actually growing, but is there any way we could see how you even like start it, like the blocks?
Absolutely. Let's go see how it's all made.
Cool, let's do it.
Check it out.
Wow, you weren't kidding. This is a proper warehouse. The smell of mushrooms is definitely in the air. It looks like over here there's a lot of stuff that's not mushrooms, but it's probably important.
Yeah, all of our raw materials and all of our bags and boxes, everything comes in and is loaded up onto pallet racks.
Yeah.
And all of that is used to grow mushrooms.
And the kind of stuff you're bringing in to make the substrate for the mushrooms to grow in, that's stuff like grain, sawdust, manure, right?
Exactly
like the
right.
main things?
Yeah, those are mixed in different proportions to make our substrates.
Cool. So from here, all that stuff comes in, and where does it go next?
Over here to the mixers.
Okay, tell me what's going on here, because I want to know it.
Big farm mixers over here that have been modified for mushroom production. Big ribbon mixers, we dump in the substrates based on the recipes, and we add moisture. We're gonna get to, 60 or 70% moisture content, and all of this gets conveyed or augured up to the next one. And then after that, it's all conveyed to the bagging machine. So around the corner, we get to see where the conveyor goes.
Yeah, where the magic happens.
So it dumps into this machine, and this is a bagging machine. It's gonna open up these specialized plastic bags. All of them have those filter patches on them, and they're really tough plastic that can handle being cooked. And it's gonna weigh out 5 pounds and tamp it down nicely and spit it right out onto this conveyor belt here. And now on this one, it gets weighed, and if it's outside of the threshold, it'll kick it right off. And then from there, it goes into this machine, and it's really cool.
I can watch that all day.
Yeah, it grabs the pleats and makes it really easy to fold.
I need that for my laundry too, honestly.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah, I bet our engineers could do it.
So once it goes through here, gets weighed, packed, sealed, what's next?
So once they're all loaded up and folded nicely onto this rack, this gets rolled into a giant pressure cooker called an autoclave.
Autoclave, I think heat and pressure, that's like what dentists use, right?
Yeah.
Sterilized tools.
All sorts of labs use it. Heat, pressure, and time is gonna kill all the microbes that could create issues.
I always wonder though, because when I have mushrooms growing outside, like they weren't sterilized, like why do you even care that much?
Inside is very different from outside. The conditions are just totally different. Hey, it sounds obvious, but it's really important that we have a high success rate and that we're not getting all sorts of other molds and mushrooms in our substrates.
Oh, okay. So that's like if I order a bag of oyster mushrooms, I want to make sure it's oysters and it doesn't have like a random shiitake or some other random spore, right?
Yeah.
That's the main goal.
When we introduce our species, we want it to be able to envelop that substrate fully and be nice and clean, be able to grow huge mushrooms without having to compete.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's the autoclave setup, but I'd love to actually see the autoclave because I can't imagine where this is going.
Oh yeah.
So can we see that?
Yeah, let's check it out.
So this giant metal tube, I'm guessing is an autoclave.
Absolutely. Sometimes called a retort. It is capable of really, really high pressures and temperatures, and we can load up hundreds of blocks at a time and cook them.
So that whole rack that we saw back there gets slid into this, and I just realized actually, I thought it was gonna be around on the other side, but it looks like it's attached to the wall?
Yeah, it's loading directly into a clean space, into a part of the lab where it can cool, but it's all filtered air.
Now it makes sense. So this is sterilized and it goes into the sterile lab. And so it's kept clean the whole time.
Right, we don't want it out here again.
And then from here, what happens next?
Well, we're gonna come around the corner. We're gonna see some of the lab. You're gonna see where it all begins. We're gonna show you our strain library and some other cool things. The next window here is our culture bank and super duper clean room. We keep the particle count at 0 in here. You can see that big chest freezer over there. We keep that at negative 80 degrees Celsius. That has all of our cultures in it.
So what does culture mean?
It's little bits of mycelium of various strains that we like, or maybe we want to experiment with, maybe we want to grow them later. Everything we have is in its mycelial state in that chest freezer.
Okay, so it's not like spore, spawn that you're propagating, it's mycelium. Like you're taking pieces of that and that's what you're then growing out to then inoculate.
Right, this is very important. We almost never work with spores. Spores are going to introduce a lot of genetic diversity, and we have strains that we like, and we want to stick with those strains. Spores are also slower and can be dirtier, so we pretty much exclusively, unless we're experimenting in some way, work with mycelium. And a myceliated substrate with the intent to spread it is known as spawn.
Okay.
What we're doing is grafting and extrapolating that mycelium, expanding it onto more and more substrate.
Okay. That's actually helping me a lot to understand exactly how mushroom growing works. So once this is like now in that petri dish, where does it go next?
Once everything's finished in the lab and our product is sealed up, it needs to grow. It gets rolled out of these doors right here on these racks, and these racks get placed in the spawn library. Right here, we have a beautiful example of grain spawn.
Okay.
And we sell grain spawn. People will make their own fruiting blocks or use grain spawn in a variety of ways themselves. We also use it in-house to inoculate our other substrates.
I see. So that's the grain spawn. Over there, that one looks different. Kind of looks like brown, like coffee almost.
That's right. This is our sawdust spawn.
Okay.
So we're using our grain spawn to inoculate our sawdust spawn. And sawdust spawn is typically used outside.
I see.
That's very common use for that. That will colonize as well. From each little grain, you'll start to see the mycelium spreading.
Right. And over there, that looks like it's maybe fully spread?
Yeah, that's a pretty cool one. This is shiitake. It definitely doesn't look like all the others. It does all this browning and popcorning, we call it, as it gets bumpy. But this is actually a fruiting block, which is similar to sawdust spawn.
Okay.
Different strains are used and slightly different recipes. But once this is colonized, as these are, you can just take the bag off or cut the bag appropriately and grow mushrooms.
So once it looks like this, it's basically ready to go. Do you just ship it directly? Do you store it? What's the process?
A lot of stuff is right out the door. We might slap a label on this and ship it out tomorrow. But if we need to keep it a little bit longer term, slow that metabolism down, we'll stick it into our walk-in. We've got a big old walk-in over there.
Well, let's walk in. It's definitely chilly in here. So this is the cold storage, and looks like you have a lot in here. Is this basically like all of your refrigerated spawn that you're keeping?
Well, it's a lot of it, but we keep a whole lot more in this. This is our VLM, or vertical lift module. It's basically a block vending machine.
So how does this function? Like vending machine, that's like an order?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay, so you could order like a tray, and that tray will have a bunch of spawn.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all very organized. It's all been, as it got loaded up, it's been put into the system, and you can just call up this tray, and they're stacked very compact, all the way up to the ceiling.
I'm surprised it's not louder. Okay, come on guys. Like how amazing is that?
all the spawn or fruiting blocks we want.
So what do we have here? It looks like we got some lion's mane, some pink oysters, and some shiitake. So it looks like you grabbed a shiitake spawn bag, and that's actually something I was gonna ask you is if we could grow mushrooms together, because you know way more than I do, especially growing outside. And shiitakes, I know you could grow them on like those logs that look super cool and magical. And is that something they think we could even do today?
I'd love that. It's one of my favorite ways of growing mushrooms. We're gonna need a few more tools and we can find all of those out there. I've got some more tools for you here.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna need that stuff.
That's interesting.
And I grabbed a box of our chestnut spawn here. This is plug spawn with some of the tools needed to get this done. And actually, I've got a great example of shiitake fruiting outside now.
Oh, well, let's go check that out. We're out in the North Spore garden where they grow one of my favorite mushrooms to eat, the wine cap, AKA king of the garden. These aptly named mushrooms can thrive in your garden pathways and shady areas, which we'll cover in depth in a future video. But there's one mushroom that I have always wanted to grow, and I think I see it hiding in the shade over here.
Welcome to my shiitake yard.
I am so welcomed because this looks absolutely incredible. What a weird magical thing, guys. Like, these mushrooms are literally bursting out of the log through the bark, and I cannot wait to do this for myself. So we're actually gonna go up the coast a little bit to a special location and set up our very own shiitake log farm. So we are deep here in the woods of Maine, a nice old deciduous forest on somebody's property where they are doing a little bit of thinning on these trees. There's plenty of tree action here, and we think we might have found the right tree to inoculate for shiitake logs. What kind of tree are we looking for in terms of wood?
That's a great question. Really, really important question. You want to find the right food source, and shiitake likes hardwood. That means no fir, spruce, pine. We're talking about oak as really the gold standard, but maple, birch, beech, alder, all of those things work just fine and are really abundant here in our forest.
Yeah, and the cool thing is I've seen is that you guys have a chart for different mushroom compatibility in trees. So if you want a specific type of mushroom, just check out the charts and you'll see the best tree for you.
Yeah, there are a lot of little things with log inoculation, and you can always reference the charts on our website.
Absolutely. And then the next thing we're looking for is the size of the tree, right? Because we're doing these almost like branches, and if they're too big and heavy, you're gonna have a bad time. So what are we looking for in terms of size?
Yeah, definitely a real sweet spot is about 4 to 6 inch diameter logs.
Okay.
And so
we were looking at this guy.
Is just right. And then about 3 feet long is about what we want. And that's how long our log sections are gonna be. The other thing about this that's really nice is it's kind of leaning in a perfect direction, so it's gonna be easy to fell, and it's surrounded by other young maples, so we're not worried about taking down a super important tree for the ecosystem here. Others will kind of take up that space very quickly.
We've got the perfect tree. Now we just got to get some safety gear and a chainsaw, see if I'm allowed to use that or not.
Yeah.
And we could get going on this. It turns out that my straw hat doesn't constitute safety, so I'm actually not going to be one felling this tree. Pete here, who's all safely geared up, I'm gonna let him do it. It's his chainsaw anyway. So thank you, Pete. I'll let you take that away.
Cheers, guys. Let's do it. Let's get into it. Don't get stuck.
All right, well, Pete made easy work of that, and we've got some perfect logs here. How's this one look?
Sure did. That is exactly what you want. It's easy to manipulate. You can see on the end grain that you have nice, healthy wood. There's no disease present or rot. These are gonna grow lots of great mushrooms for years to come.
And you told me something about this, which was interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to think about the fact that like you have a stump left over. Once you take your logs up to your inoculation space, you shouldn't forget about the stump you left behind. You could inoculate that with shiitake right in place. You may have some leftover spawn, but you could also inoculate it with other species that may really love that sort of stump habitat. Things like hen of the woods. You could inoculate a maple with hen of the woods. It's found on that every once in a while, but it really loves oak. So if you're cutting oak, really consider inoculating the leftover stump with that other species. So great opportunity. You can even slice this up and do the totem method. Again, you'll learn more about that on our website or in future videos.
Yeah, and that sounds like a really fun thing to do as like a little bonus that you could leave in your forest to come back to as like a little forage.
Yeah.
But now I think we're ready to load up, get up there and get these logs ready. Okay, Lou, we have 4 beautiful, perfect maple logs here, and we're gonna do 2 different ways of inoculating these logs. The first one we're gonna do is actually with the plug spawn. which my understanding at least is that this is probably the best bet for a beginner who's doing like a handful of logs.
Yeah, that's right. 2 to 4 logs is about right for the 100 plugs that are in there.
Okay, and that'll be like a pretty simple method, straightforward. After that, we're gonna do the sawdust spawn, which is also simple, but it's great if you're doing a lot of logs. So that's like if you're trying to get serious on like some mushroom production, whatever one you're doing. But today we're gonna do shiitake and chestnuts for the plugs.
First step in getting ready to do this, we need to make sure we have wax, and we need to make sure the wax is melted. We use a food grade paraffin wax powdered up like this, and we use crock pots. This crock pot has seen a whole lot of wax in its day, and it's nice and melted, but that can take as long as a half hour, 45 minutes, especially if the weather is colder. So you really want to get that going first. Once that's set and melting, you don't want to burn it. You got to make sure you keep an eye on it. And if you're going to use a flame or some other method, you know, just keep an eye on that wax, because wax can burn.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like there's that wax in there. I see these are the plugs, and they look like they have that grain that you were actually showing me at the warehouse.
Absolutely. Everything gets inoculated with our grain spawn.
Okay, so basically these are the dowels that have that, and it's colonized by the spawn.
Yeah, if you look closely on all of these dowels, you can see the white mycelium on the dowels, and that's what's going to transfer to its new food source in the log.
Okay, so this is like the seed that we're planting for the mushroom that's going to take over. The other thing I see in here is, I'm not sure what to call this.
We call it a dauber.
A dauber. So we have a dauber, and then it looks like a drill bit. So what's our next step?
So I would say that the next most important thing is our drilling tool.
Okay.
And here we've just got a normal hand drill. And we've actually marked off the perfect depth just with a piece of tape of the plug itself.
So one of these guys here.
So it's just matches right up. That's the depth that we're gonna go so that the plug can seed nicely into the log.
I'm guessing it's probably more important to go deep enough. Like shallow doesn't work, but a little deeper is fine.
Yeah, you don't want the plug sticking up out of the hole, because when you wax, it's gonna lose moisture faster, and the wax won't adhere very well. It'll get knocked off much easier. It's better if it's a little sunken even. If you wanna go a little deeper, that's fine.
And so you've got the drill. And is this as straightforward as I would guess? Like drilling holes?
Another great thing is some eye protection.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. That can be pretty important. I actually think, you know, some people will wear gloves. That's fine if you have good dexterity. I like to keep the dexterity without them. Hearing protection is something else to consider. And then we're gonna drill holes in a diamond pattern around the whole log.
Okay.
About 6 inches apart.
So like a hand or something?
Yeah, exactly. Just go like that. And then the rows can be a little closer together than that. The rows can be maybe 3-4 inches apart, and they're gonna be offset, and it's gonna create that diamond pattern.
This is perfect way to garden as well. For nice, tight, intensive planting, you do the same thing. You don't plant in straight lines.
Yeah, this is your garden bed.
Exactly.
And that way, there's a lot of spawn, and it's all evenly placed. If you put all your spawn on one end, that mycelium has to move all the way to the other end.
Okay.
And that's gonna take a lot of time.
That makes sense.
And so this way, they can all meet up and are all equidistant.
Cool.
In the shortest amount of time. So we're going to start a couple inches from the edge.
Okay.
And we're always gonna rev up first and not have our bit on the wood as we rev up.
Oh. I haven't drilled greenwood, I have to say.
Yeah.
It's not something I normally do.
And we're just gonna go right in.
Yeah. And then you were mentioning that beyond using the drill, there's like something a little bit easier.
Yeah.
That you were telling me you prefer.
Absolutely. The truth is, a hand drill like this, it's gonna take you a really long time. It's gonna put a lot of strain on the drill. The best tool is a trusty angle grinder. Get yourself one of these, trust me.
I love the modification on this too. Yeah. It just seems like you're probably gonna have a better ergonomic situation.
It's a much more powerful, the battery lasts longer. We have these angle grinder adapters with these special bits that you don't need to put a piece of tape on it, because it's got a collar. It's gonna go just the right depth.
Okay, so this is something you guys basically offer that just attaches to the angle grinder.
Absolutely.
Okay.
These are made in Japan. These are designed for log cultivation.
Oh, that's probably gonna just push that like extra scraps as you're drilling right out.
Absolutely, it's like butter. It really is. Especially, I'll tell you, if you have a corded angle grinder, super powerful.
Oh yeah, all right, let's see.
So check out this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, how much faster can it be when you were telling me?
No, it's crazy. Like, look. So as you see, if you really get going with one of these,
Yeah.
you can bust out. And so it's important to notice that like these will be the path of least resistance. And this is where the shiitakes tend to pop out of, but they're gonna come out all over the place, wherever they find is convenient. That's good.
Now I've got these. Is that it?
Usually you can plug right on your stand. A lot of times, if you're doing this with some friends, you might have people on either side of a table inoculating the log and tapping them in. But I'll usually move the log to the table. I'll put down my drill and you can move the log. I will open up the plugs, and it really is as easy as this, guys.
And I noticed that we have the cardboard down. I'm guessing that's to stop the wax.
Yeah,
that we're about to do next.
The wax, that's most important for wax. I have a lot of tables that are covered in wax.
I believe that.
And it's annoying to scrape off, and we just try to minimize that as best we can, and cardboard is readily available. So,
do you want me to start plugging?
Yeah, we can just dump a few of those out and start putting these
it
in.
actually goes in.
It goes in nicely, and then we can just
I'm guessing most of them are just gonna pop right in.
Right.
A couple stubborn ones.
And plugs are really nice because they don't fall out like that.
Right.
And that can be an issue with sawdust spawn, and it really highlights the importance of wax.
So that's what it looks like once all the dowels are in, or the plugs, and it's pretty much like flush to the surface, and that's exactly what we want.
Yeah, and at this point, it's really important to label your logs. In a year, you may forget what you put in there, and you may have multiple species, and so you gotta label it with the species and the date. I usually use these trusty like aluminum tags and staple them into the ends.
Right. And that's not gonna fade. Like I'm guessing if you do Sharpie, good luck.
Yeah, Sharpie will last maybe a year.
Yeah.
And like if you don't have anything else,
or a mushroom pops out there.
Start with that. Or you can use a sign in front of the logs. But this is a really great way because like you said, ink doesn't matter. It's etched into the metal. And so I can write chestnut.
Yeah, you could see it just dents right into the metal.
Absolutely.
That's permanent.
So that'll be great right there. And then we'll just go bang, bang.
Easy.
And so now it's labeled. And now the last step is the wax, absolutely. And this step also pretty quick, really fun. We kind of take it over here. We open up our wax. Be careful, guys. You know, not enough was said about how important safety is. There could be extension cords involved. There's hot wax involved. There's angle grinders and drills involved, staple guns. Pay attention, wear the right protective gear. Yeah, it's really fun, but it's also serious business.
So this is all loaded up with liquid hot wax.
And let me tell you, if you've got a big crock pot like this and the daubers are in danger of falling in, I often take like twist ties, and actually a lot of times when you buy the metal tags, they come with these twist ties.
Yeah, because these are generally used to like label orchards, and they're perfect for that.
I really love just twisting them around and using them as a hook to protect the dauber from falling in, and then you have to fish it out and you burn your hands, and that's not fun. Just kind of give it a little tap so there's not a ton of excess, and then dab, dab, dab.
Yeah, you can see it's very liquid.
Yep, it's real nice and melty.
Good to pay attention.
Get a few of them, and you can do a bunch. This wax stays very melty, and it adheres very well. It's very flexible wax. That's what you want your wax to be. You could use beeswax. You could use soy-based wax. This paraffin wax has shown to have the best properties for this.
After this, we'll set this one aside. We'll talk about exactly where to put it, but let's get into the sawdust spawn, and we'll set up that one next. Lou, we have the first log ready with the plugs. I'm gonna get these out of the way. Now we're gonna try the sawdust. And I think we need something different, right?
Right, it's a slightly different process. Well, first we gotta open our bag up. Look at that.
I could smell it.
Yeah, you really can. Oh my goodness.
I actually really like the
and all spawn kind of has a little bit different smell.
You know what's
too?
interesting is if you smell the roots of like a seedling, it will also smell like, if you smell a cucumber root, it smells like a cucumber cut in half.
I love that. So now we've got our spawn open, and we've got our inoculation tool. We actually have to switch bits. The bit for the plug spawn is an 8.5 millimeter bit.
Okay, just a slightly different size.
Right, and we are gonna use a 12 millimeter bit. So now we're ready with that. And waxing and labeling, that's all the same. So watch, it's as simple as this. Bam, Maybe give it a couple, make sure it's jammed in there. And now you have a plug of sawdust spawn.
Here, hit me with the plug. Perfect.
Just like
so
that.
There it is. You could see all the mycelium in there. And with all that surface area, it'll probably be a little faster than the wood.
It's gonna be, exactly. More surface area means more mycelium. It's also amended, so it has a little bit more nutrients.
Okay.
And because it's a larger diameter, there's actually more material.
Got it. So both systems work essentially the same, but this will be for more logs and it'll start up a little bit faster.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Now we can transfer this to the table and watch how much faster this can be.
Oh, so it's even faster. Oh.
And this, it's just cleaner than having to go, put the plugs in, tap them all in.
I get it
You
now.
just can go down
So
the
you're
line.
good with compressing. That's why you're doing that double tap, really?
Yeah, give it a try.
It's truly amazing to see somebody who's done something many times, how much faster you are doing things.
So as you can see, there's a lot of sawdust spawn there.
Yeah.
You could do about 20 logs this size. Now it's time to label.
Label.
And I made one ahead of time, Shiitake 91824. And so we'll just stick it right on there.
2 staples for good luck.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll daub this up and then we'll get the other log and we'll find a good place to put this. That might have been an overdaub there, but.
Can't overdo it.
Okay.
Some people wax the ends of their logs, and that's a fine thing to do, especially if you're trying to maintain moisture initially. Like maybe you're gonna bring your log inside during the winter for a month to give it some colonization inside, or you're in a very dry place. It'll maintain that initial moisture to give it a boost. I feel that, you know, while you're keeping moisture in, you're also keeping it out. In a place like Maine, you just don't need to do it. There's enough rain
for San
here.
Diego, that would be.
It might be, yeah, might be a thing to try. Our chestnut and shiitake logs have all been made. They're finished, but they still need to incubate. Right now, they're sitting under this evergreen tree and it's a perfect place for them to rest and the mycelium to spread throughout the logs. An evergreen tree isn't gonna lose its leaves. It's gonna keep its shade throughout the year and the rain can get to these. And in a place like Maine, we get plenty of rain. So you really don't have to worry too much about that. But in a dry spell like we're having now, or maybe the middle of the summer, it's helpful to water your logs.
So this initial period, we're basically trying to get this to fully colonize the logs. And the most important thing is we don't want them to be baking in the sun, and we want to keep them some amount of moisture in those logs, right?
Yeah, and so as far as stacking them, you want to have a nice tight stack. You want them to be nice and close together and close to the ground. So that they're retaining moisture. Now, once they've fully colonized, in about a year, sometimes a little more, sometimes less, but assume about a year, you can take these logs and you can dunk them in nice cold water, in a trough, in a pool, in a stream.
And dunking, like you're literally just like dipping it in the water, or?
No, we're doing a soak, really.
Okay.
And it'll be a soak for about 24 hours, and you want to keep them fully submerged if you can. Put some weight on top. Those will be quite a bit heavier. You'll feel the hydration.
Yeah.
And you can pull them out, and then you're going to want to put them in a fruiting formation. So you need airflow and you need room for the mushrooms to grow from there. So then you can stack in that crib stack method that we saw at North Spore.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can stack, you can just lean them up against each other in a teepee, lean them up against a fence or a tree. There's several other ways to stack.
You just want airflow and easy access, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could even line a bed with shiitake logs and have them fruiting all around your veggie bed.
You've given me a lot of really interesting ideas to actually try to take to the homestead.
Yeah.
And I am going to be setting up all sorts of mushroom beds. Like, I'm going to find logs for sure. It's actually something I wanted to ask you about because for me, I'm in San Diego. There's not that many maples and oaks around.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice in terms of how to find these?
It's absolutely a question we get all the time. Where am I gonna get logs? You can't just walk into a store, even a garden center. They're not gonna have logs for you. So the best thing to do is to reach out to your town parks department or forester, and they're always cutting. And so they may have logs available for you. Local arborists and landscapers. They're always cutting stuff and they can probably hook you up.
Because it's a waste product for them. They have to figure out where the heck they're gonna throw it away.
Yeah, you're doing them a favor and can likely get them for free.
So one thing I wanna say is that I am going to take all the knowledge that you've transferred to me, whatever I've absorbed, I'm gonna try to transfer that to Kevin. We're gonna grow some mushrooms back in San Diego, And what I'm really excited about is that we are actually going to carry a whole assortment of really cool North Spore stuff on our Epic Gardening store. It's going to be really fun options for indoor and outdoor growing. So definitely check out the link below, but it's been super fun coming here. I actually cannot wait to come back and check on these logs. I now have a reason to return to Maine, but thank you for teaching me everything, Lou, and thanks for showing me around North Spore and Maine a bit.
An absolute pleasure.
Likewise.